By now, you're probably getting the picture. 18th century France was a place where the odd and the overreaching often met under the polished umbrella of law. But if you thought taxes on dogs and window panes were the limits of legal eccentricity, wait until you hear about how the law treated apologies. Yes, official, court-mandated public apologies delivered not in private, but in full view of the community, often in the most humiliating ways imaginable. This peculiar practice was known as the amende honorable, and while the name sounds graceful, almost like a handshake offered in peace, it was anything but. Picture this: you in a simple white shirt, barefoot, head uncovered, kneeling before a church or courthouse. You're holding a candle, and you're reciting, aloud, a formulaic apology for your crime, whether it was theft, blasphemy, or insulting the king's cousin's cousin. That apology? Required by law. Now, you might wonder, why go to such theatrical lengths just to say sorry? Well, in a deeply hierarchical and honor-based society, apologies weren't just social niceties. They were legal currency. They served as a kind of spiritual and moral reset, a moment in which your public disgrace was both punishment and redemption rolled into one awkward performance. And trust me, if you were one of the many unfortunate souls who had to deliver an amende honorable, it was a moment you wouldn't forget. Neither would your neighbors. What made this custom truly strange, though, wasn't just the performance. It was the degree to which it was scripted. The exact words of the apology were usually provided by the court, and any deviation from the script could land you in further trouble. I deeply regret having offended the laws of the king and the Holy Church. You had to say it exactly that way, candle in hand, often in front of the very people who turned you in. One wonders if forgetting a line counted as perjury. Historians still argue whether the amende honorable was truly meant to reform the offender or simply to reinforce social hierarchy and state control. Was it about forgiveness or about fear? The truth likely lies somewhere in the middle. While there was certainly an element of moral instruction to the whole affair, most scholars agree that the real function was deterrence. By humiliating the offender so publicly, the state hoped to dissuade others from stepping out of line. Think of it as moral theater, with you in the starring role, though not exactly the one you'd hope to land. And yes, there were repeat performances. In some jurisdictions, if you offended the wrong person, say a noble, a clergyman, or anyone with connections, you could be required to perform multiple amends honorables in different towns. Imagine having to pack up your candle, memorize your lines again, and trudge off to deliver your shame to a whole new audience. It was like a punishment tour, except there were no groupies, no encores, and certainly no merchandise tables that, of course, not everyone took these apologies seriously. In fact, some offenders began to treat them as performance art, delivering their lines with exaggerated sorrow or barely stifled sarcasm. There are records of people breaking into laughter during their own public apology or purposely mispronouncing the lines in protest. In response, some magistrates began assigning actors or scribes to rehearse with the accused beforehand, to make sure their contrition felt just tragic enough. And while this system was applied most often to commoners, you'll be delighted, or maybe appalled, to know that nobles occasionally had to kneel and apologize too. Though never, let's be honest, with quite the same level of candle-holding humiliation. One particularly memorable case involved a minor aristocrat who insulted the wrong bishop at the wrong dinner party and found himself kneeling before the cathedral 2 weeks later. He delivered the line with all the enthusiasm of a man reciting laundry instructions, but the point was made. Not even blue blood kept you safe from theatrical remorse. But the amende honorable wasn't just a quirky punishment. It was also a legal requirement in certain cases to seal peace between rival families, particularly in smaller towns. If you had offended your neighbor and things got heated enough, the court might sentence you to apologize in front of the whole town square, just to calm tensions. Sometimes the wrong party would even be offered the chance to watch from a privileged seat, just to really savor the moment. It sounds petty, but in communities where honor was everything, this was a powerful form of closure. The church loved this stuff, by the way. Public apologies dovetailed perfectly with their ideas about penance and spiritual cleansing. Priests were often involved in overseeing the ritual, ensuring that the offender looked properly contrite and didn't try to sneak in a wink or smirk. It was part civic duty, part public shamefest, and entirely in line with the idea that sin should be washed away in full view of your fellow and as strange as this all may sound. It's worth remembering that today's legal apologies, press conferences, courtroom statements, carefully worded PR campaigns are not so different. We may not kneel with candles anymore, but the principle remains. If you break the rules, you must perform your remorse. And let's be honest, some modern apologies, with their awkward body language and scripted phrases, feel just as theatrical as anything dreamed up in 18th century France. Still, there's something deeply human about this legal tradition. For all its strangeness, the Unwind Honorable speaks to a very real truth, that shame, community, and forgiveness are closely intertwined. And maybe, just maybe, there's a part of you that would rather do the candle holding than post an apology video with a shaky camera and too many jump cuts. But don't get too cozy just yet. The next bizarre law we'll visit involves hair, wigs, and a very serious question of ownership.